that we all do as storytellers and as creatives, we always have to deal with something called rejection. How do you, in your opinion, how do you deal with rejection?
Well, I just do so many things that I don't have time to stew about it. It's like if you have that much out there, and I've written about rejection many times in many different books and blogs, and basically rejection is not something you should spend an ounce of your emotional time on because it is a category that is required for success. I mean, if you don't fail, and if you want to call rejection failure, if you don't fail, you're never going to succeed because everyone who's ever succeeded has done it through failing or being rejected. Just imagine if you were selling, vacuum sweepers from door to door. If you got discouraged and had to go out to the local bar for a drink every time you got the door slammed in your face, you would quickly become an alcoholic and not sell very many vacuum sweepers, right? So what's interesting is in the book business they actually use the word rejection, but in the film business they never use that word. I don't think I've ever heard it once. They simply, if they say anything, will say they're passing. More likely they're going to say, especially to me, that the door is always open. This just doesn't fit here right now. We just got a rejection on a major series that we know we're going to sell, and from a major company, Stars, who told us, we have to pass on this right now, if you understand, but please come back here after Christmas and after the holidays if you haven't set it up. And the reason has to do with, regime change and all kinds of things. It almost
Politics.
never has to do. Yeah, rarely has to do with the story itself, assuming that you've got a good story. So you just have to get used to it. And I tell my clients that the best way to get used to it is be working on something else all the time. So you're objective toward the thing you worked on before. What you have control over is what you write. You have no control over the fate of what you've written. And you shouldn't waste any time thinking about that. Once you've gotten it into the hands of somebody who knows what they're doing to represent it, you should simply start, creating more stuff and put together a whole gallery of things you've created.
I also there's an element with storytelling in general as being in the right place at the right time with the right product, and there's certain time periods that a certain story makes absolute sense that would never fly in today's world. I mean, I always use Blazing Saddles. Will never get made in today's world. Many of Mel Brooks's movies would never get made in today's world. But like I had a film that I was pitching around town 8-9 years ago, which had a female lead, kind of like comic booky style movie. And everybody would say, oh, you can't put a female as a lead in an action movie. That's insane. Why would you do something like that? So I was a little ahead of the curve, regardless if my story is good or not. That's, but the point is just the concept of the constant thing I heard. And there weren't many movies being made that had female leads, where now female lead action movies are not a big deal. I mean, depending on the type of movie it is and so on and so forth. So I do believe that there is a certain good timing, good place for certain stories. Have you run across that as well?
Oh yeah, I'll never forget. I was walking down the street in New York one day, and I got a phone call from a publisher and said, "I am so sorry to be getting back to you. What, 3 years later? Is that book still available?" And I said, "I think it is. We have some interest in it, but I think it's available." And of course, it was not only available, but the author had forgotten it existed. And long story short, I ended up making a 3-book deal, that day. And the author was flabbergasted because he had moved on to other things, as I had advised him to do. But the story, its timeliness had just suddenly occurred. And recently I sold a movie that was on Up Channel on a novel that we had been trying to sell for 20 years. And there just wasn't a market for it. And we finally sold it, and it was on 2 years ago. It finally played and did very well. And you simply would never know that it had been waiting around for 20 years, like The Meg was. The Meg, the biggest movie of the last couple of years that I've done, 540 million worldwide to date. That was sold 20 2 years ago for the first time. And it was simply in limbo all those years, going from one studio to the other, from one writer to the other, and finally got made and, knocked out the box office as I predicted it would 22 years ago. And that just happens all the time. A story's time has come or it hasn't come. You can't predict, whether your overnight success will happen in 20 years or in, overnight.
Now, with the Meg specifically, though, I think 22 years ago, it would not have been the same movie as they made today. Technology was just a little bit more advanced today than it was 22 years ago to put that movie to life.
In fact, I think that was a good thing for the movie. Plus it was much less expensive than it might have been 22 years ago because the technology is so much more advanced. And that's true. So it's almost like every story has its own fate and its own God in charge of it, and you really have to let it go the way you would a child at a certain point and make its way in the world or not.
Now, with the movie The Meg specifically, for people who don't know the movie The Meg, it was basically kind of like a Jaws, but with a prehistoric shark that was just the size of a skyscraper.
A prehistoric 70-foot long shark, as opposed to a 12-foot long shark or 20-foot long shark. So not only do you need a bigger boat, you need a bigger ocean port to deal with, and so that was a story that led to, I think we sold 7 more Meg books for Steve after the first one, and then another 6 or 7 books that are not about Meg. So he built a whole career out of it while waiting for the movie to get finally, made.
Is there going to be a sequel?
Oh yeah, there definitely will be a sequel. As soon as the U.S.-Chinese financing situation gets, settled down, both sides living in complete uncertainty every moment, that's the only impediment there is right now to the story.